Hello and welcome to the second edition of Happy Hour on the Western Bulldogs pod series, brought to you, of course, by our very dear friends, Mercedes-Benz Vans. And I get the sense that this series is going to be very special for Bulldogs fans, but particularly for Marcus and I every week. But in episode 2, this is going to take some topping. I don't know if you play your best track on song number 2 of your album, but we grew up. Footy's a game of sort of idolising heroes and trying to emulate those who've gone before you. And Marcus, you and I have both got a weakness as kids. We're huge Richmond Tigers fans, and although there's about 13 years difference in age between you and I.
Yep.
I think we had the same man as a poster on our wall, and that man is the King Tiger himself, the Tiger King.
The Tiger King. Absolutely.
Richo, thanks for joining us on Happy Hour, man.
Absolute pleasure, guys. Good to be here. And how good was Tiger King, by the way, the doco?
I still haven't seen it.
Haven't you
You
seen
haven't watched it, have you, Bob?
I haven't
Bob.
seen it yet.
I think Bob's rebelling. Bob prefers to do things his own way, and he's always going to be the one little different bloke. And because it's culturally there's a shift, he's like, you thumb your nose at stuff like that. You've always been like that, Bob.
I thought after the warm intro, how has this turned into a roast in the first 2 minutes?
Because there's going to be a virtual fight here over who was the bigger Richo fan. I reckon this will be the first ever, virtual fight for whoever Richo likes better.
Okay, well, I've told my story quite a number of times about being a work experience kid and Matthew tapping me on the shoulder and asking me if I would like to have a look at that champ. But the reason we're here, Matthew, you've defended that story enough, but really the reason we're kind of here tonight and being able to organise is because of a single photo, and it's of you, Marcus, as a little kid on Punt Road with the Tiger King right there. So do you want to pick up the story? When was that, and what was that experience like?
Well, that would have been when I was about, I reckon 10 or so maybe at the time, and as I'm sort of involved in now. But back then, being a massive Richmond fan, one of my really good mates at the time was a member, and I think he, with the membership, you get to go along to these clinics and days, and then that was obviously. I scored a +1 to the event because it must have been a bring your mate day. And of course, the only person I really, really was interested in seeing and getting a photo with was with the great man with us today. And, as we all do as kids and as juniors had heroes, Richo was certainly one of mine growing up. So it's, I still pinch myself being able to organise something like this and have a chat with the great man in such a personal sort of space.
Oh, thanks for that, Marcus. And I'll tell you what, Bob, after a grand final this year, we went back to the September Club, and I was lucky enough to bump into Marcus there at the September Club, and I had a photo with him that night, and I came home, and I was like a kid that night getting my photo with Bont. So it's actually gone full circus. It's gone full circle.
That's got to be the full circle of football life there. The young kid asking your photo, and then you kind of clamour for his. That's amazing.
I've actually got a theory that footy clubs should try and draft players that barracked for the club. I reckon when you get to a club, if you've actually supported it as a kid, you just might put a little bit more in. So
you reckon like a sort of like a father-son kind of currency, like it should hold a bit of weight. If you've been a member for say 10+ years.
Really? Okay.
I think so, because if you're passionate about a footy club as a supporter and you arrive there as a player, I mean, there's nothing better. I know there was nothing better for me as a Richmond supporter growing up to arrive at Tigerland. I reckon recruiters should try and recruit guys that barrack for the club.
It's an interesting point, and I think anyone listening should ponder that. The fact that this is a Western Bulldogs podcast.
Yeah,
I'm just going to step away from it a little bit and go, I hear what you're saying.
The membership hotline comes up down the bottom. That'll be next. Just flashes across the screen.
We're happy to have you. We're very, very happy to have you at Tigerland if you ever consider moving, Marcus.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Get your hands up. Hey, no, can I ask you? So we're sitting here tonight,
Yep.
and there's a little bit of like the 8-year-old kid in both of Marcus and I that you were our hero. But when you were 8 years old, I know you played for the Tigers, but who was sort of your hero in those early years?
Yeah, good question, Bob. I guess I lived in Tassie growing up as a kid, and we'd come to Melbourne on school holidays. My dad's mother lived in Cheltenham, so we'd come over and stay at Nana's house in Cheltenham, and we'd go into a Richmond game probably once every year when we'd come over. And I remember the first time Dad took me down into the change rooms. I walked in, and because Dad was a former player, we had that inner sanctum access that, it was pretty hard. And I remember standing there and just looking up at the great Michael Roach, Disco Roach. And I just wanted to be him. So he was the one for me. If I could have picked any player in that change room, the first one to get a photo with would have been Disco. He was from Tasmania as well. So looking at Disco, I thought, wow, a kid from Tassie, here he is playing for Richmond. So you could sort of touch and feel it a little bit. So, yeah, Disco was my hero, Bob.
That's pretty wild.
Good nickname as well, isn't it?
So didn't we try and debunk the Disco Roach nickname? Wasn't it? They went out on the drink, and the next day his teammates were calling him Disco, and he didn't know why, but he'd been singing or dancing to the song Disco Duck.
There was a song called Disco Duck back in the late 70s, right? That was a number one hit. I think it was actually a number one hit, Disco Duck. I'm not sure who sung it, but Michael had a few beverages and was standing up on a stool, and Disco Duck came on, and he was singing Disco Duck. So that's how he got the nickname. It's not quite what you want it to be, is it?
No, I'll be honest. I'm a little bit. I thought maybe there's a bit more to it, but it's just more matter of fact than anything.
Yeah. I mean, I thought he must have been a mad party animal, but he's not at all.
Yeah.
So,
Oh. I've got a question, and it's not for you, Richo. It's more for you, Bobby. Now, Richo, you get drafted. A few years later, you start to play. People obviously start to recognise the type of player that you are already knowing, probably your build up. But what I probably call the Richo era, Bob, what was it like, being in and around it, playing against the Tigs, pretty strong, rivalry. There's a connection there between the Dogs and the Tigers. But from your perspective, Bob, what was it like playing against the great man? Did he have any days out against the Dogs that you remember fondly at all?
Well, there's definitely one day that I think we should get to at some stage. And Matthew, see the Cheshire grin. The Cheshire grin runs across his face. So there's the day where he has the day out. And there was, you're right, there was a lot of crossover between the Bulldogs and the Tigers. A lot of, Nathan Brown, Terry Wallace, Leon Cameron, Patrick Bowden. There was all the kind of... So
Ben Harrison.
Ben Harrison. There was like fierce rivalry on the field, but then we'd sort of socialise off the field, which was kind of a weird combo. But the story that I want to tell you, which we'll get to the day that he kicked 10 against the Dogs in a sec, but do you remember that 2008 the Hall of Fame game? So it was Victoria versus the All Stars. So this is like that.
Yes.
This is the best of the best. This is like this is Judd and all those guys. It was the fair and all the biggest names in the whole thing. The game was high scoring Hollywood sort of football. But then after the game, everyone went back to the Waterside Hotel, and it was a boozy late night. There's no other way to describe it. But what I would tell you is there's always one that all the players sort of gravitated to, and they gravitated towards Matthew because it was like everyone wanted to have a beer with Matthew and like...
The Richo man.
Stoke up a bit of the... Because this was around, and this was Matthew was at the peak of his powers, and the sort of affinity for him from the general footy public had sort of swung wildly in his favour. So it was kind of...
He was the man.
We all wanted to have like Duncan, we all want to have a drink with Matthew. Matthew is me, mate.
He's our mate. Yeah,
that's
I love
funny,
that.
Bob, because my memory of that night is that all I wanted to do was get around Buddy Franklin and have a beer with Buddy Franklin.
That
was the man I wanted to get around.
Yeah, well, so that was when Buddy was that was 2008 where Buddy kind of exploded and
He was starting to go. Yeah.
Which is that? I mean, that you played the exhibition game, for the bushfire appeal, which I think, and not everyone's a fan of rep footy, but there's something kind of exciting about watching the best of the best just mingle around, and footy teams have a way of the pecking order sorts itself out pretty quick. Is that how the bushfire game felt?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, it's been a few years between that sort of format's been played, so it sort of feels like there was a little bit of unknown with it. It's not like you have any sort of prior experience or even stories from within a couple of years to know how to set yourself. And clearly, there's a fair bit of talk about whether is it going to be, how physical is it going to be, or is it more of an exhibition game or a show? But I think the one thing that we all probably have experienced, that once you get to playing the game, it's like, righto, you got 18v18, the things, and that sort of just clicks over, I guess, and you just start playing. But I was exactly the same. Like when you think about playing with those types of players within that game,
who was the alpha in the locker room? Was it
Dusty? I'd have to say Dusty was the alpha, but sort of like he's a quiet alpha. Like he's not, boisterous, or he just goes about his business. But you can't help but just sort of
ones that don't have to try and be an alpha, but they are.
Yeah. So I'd say
Who else did you really enjoy playing with that night, Marcus? Was there a player from another team that you thought, gee, I can't wait to get out and play with that guy?
There was a couple. I mean, it was good to get back with. I played a bit of junior footy with Josh Kelly, sort of growing up through the under-18 competition. It was good to sort of get back and play some football with him. I think that the ones I was most looking probably forward to are the ones that potentially I'd watched a fair bit as well just before I was drafted, and that was, it was Pendles, Danger. Rory Sloane is a ripper. He's a great fella. So they're those types of players that I think that tiny bit older, they've been through a fair bit more, and you've just sort of built a little bit more of a watchful eye on. So they were the ones I was really keen to sort of have a run around with and play with. Travis Boak's another one who I've always liked the way he goes about his business. So there was a handful, that's for sure.
It's hard to imagine a better bloke than Rory Sloane. Just having you meet a lot of people in football, but I've never met anyone that doesn't like Rory Sloane. He's a terrific guy.
He's got the full package too, man. He's got the Hollywood hair.
Yeah. He's hard. Yeah, he's going to be hard to match.
Yeah.
He can surf. I love guys who can surf. I'd love to be able to surf, and he surfs. He does everything.
I've got a question for you. When anyone's out, this is a question for both of you. Have you ever hesitated when someone said, "Hey, do you surf?" Have you ever
Absolutely.
I've told many a person, particularly when I'm overseas, that I surf because I'm from Australia. Like you meant
exactly the same. You have to. You have to.
I just always let, as a reflex, just let the question hang, just for a couple of seconds to imagine. What if I did?
Yeah. What? Yeah. I mean, I think then
instantly more interesting, bit cooler.
Yeah. I think they'd be a bit more doubtful of us, probably, Richo, potentially with our size. It's like, really though. Like even if you said yes, you're still getting not so sure about that one.
I reckon a tall surfer is 6 foot. That is a tall surfer. You're not seeing any guys 6'5" winning at Pipeline, are you?
Hey, Matt, what was that? We're talking about rep footy. What was it like back in the day when you were playing for the Allies in that sort of era?
Yeah, I remember my first.
Was it Tassie? Did you play Tassie?
Yeah, I played for Tasmania in 1993 down in Hobart. It's the last time Tasmania ever played rep footy.
Wow.
To me, that was the best experience because you're actually playing for your state. For me, the Allies just didn't have that feeling. You're not representing your own state. So I'd only played 4 AFL games at that stage. I got picked to play for Tassie, and we played against Queensland down in Hobart.
Who were the sort of older heads in for Tassie then?
Oh, the older guys were guys like Steve McPherson from the Bulldogs, Luke McPherson, Simon Atkins from the Bulldogs. Guys like Graham Wright.
Matty Armstrong, was he like?
Matty Armstrong, guys like that. James Manson from Collingwood. Remember Big James Manson?
Big Charlie.
What I remember about that day is Jason Dunstall kicking 10 goals, just absolutely annihilated us.
The question probably for both. Do you think there's, we've done the bushfire game. It's got a great, charity element attached to it. Do you think there's still room for it, or something like that happen more regularly from your perspectives?
Oh, I've got a feeling no, Marcus, because I just think, there's that much involved at clubland now, and the risks for you to go out and play for Victoria, while it sounds great in theory, if you were to be injured playing for Victoria, I mean, Western Bulldogs supporters would be up in arms, and people go, oh, well, you can get injured playing for your club, but you're playing for your club when you get injured. They're the ones that you pay your wages, so I just don't think it'll ever be embraced fully again. And even the game, the bushfire game, let's be honest, it was quite an open game. It didn't have, a lot of tackle intensity. So, I don't think it'll ever be like rugby league. What about you, Bobby? What do you think?
State of Origin's done. What that sort of
hard to replicate.
Was, and that I kind of tend to think that there's probably room for an exhibition game of the best of the best, like almost like a pre-season all-star. But it's probably not for Matthew and I. It's probably more for kids and a TV event. All that sort of you'd love to see a game that's got a bit more on the line.
You talking like an all-star game, like in the NBA sort of thing?
Yeah, more that State of Origin. It's not. I think that's kind of done.
Yeah.
But I just kind of am always fascinated with just seeing the best players kind of in and around the same thing.
Yeah.
Talking about the best players, Matt, can you just walk us through the day you broke Bulldog hearts in 2000 and I want to say 2004?
Yeah.
When you kicked 10, when you kicked the.
Hard to remember that day.
I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to lie to you guys because I love both of you guys. I remember it very well. I remember every goal. I remember Scott Bassett came to me at the start of the game, and I reckon I had 2 or 3 centimetres on him. He was only a young player at the time.
And the rest.
Yeah. The grass, the grass had just been clipped. The sun was shining.
It's vivid. Like it was yesterday.
Yeah, I had a feeling it might be my day early. I've got a couple.
So I want to ask you about that. So because key forwards, anyone that's ever played has, we all know that feeling. Some days it's just clicking, but for key forwards, it's magnified.
Yeah.
On a day like that, how early are you like, something's up here, something's on?
Probably before the ball was bounced that day, I think. Right. It was just a beautiful day at the MCG. And I reckon you guys had a few injuries, and I reckon maybe a couple of you key defenders weren't playing that day.
And we weren't much good.
Yeah. So I looked around and I thought, gee, if I can get a few on Bassett early, there's not a lot else for the Dogs to go to. Ryan Hargrave, he was, what was Ryan? 6 foot
2.5, 3,
He was probably only 85 kilos, and I was about 105 kilos at that stage.
Oof.
So I just felt like I didn't think there was a match up there, Bob, that worked for you.
Where were you, Bob? Where were you? Were you back or forward? Or were you not on?
I don't know what I was doing at that stage.
The one thing I will say about that day was the runner had come out to, I think Hargrave was being moved somewhere else. So the runner came out, and I can't remember who they were trying to get back to full back, but for about 30 seconds, Luke Darcy had to come and stand next to me. And at that point, I looked at Darcy and I said, surely they're not going with you, Darcy. Surely they're not going with
That's
you.
nice.
Oh, that's
He didn't like it. My favourite memory of that day is I actually had 4 of my best mates from Tasmania who used to come over to Melbourne once a year to catch up with myself and Ben Harrison, who we all went to school together in Tassie. And they were there that day, and we were meeting them down at the Swan Hotel in Swan Street after the game. I couldn't get there quick enough, and yeah, it was a good night.
So, Marcus, I don't know what I was doing on the field, but I was quite conflicted because, as you would know, growing up, the idea of a Tiger premiership was really not on the radar. So in place of a Tiger premiership in my childhood was if Richo could just kick 10, if he could kick 10, that'd do me. I was like, that'll do. And when the day finally arrived, I had great seats.
Popcorn out.
It was a different uniform on, so I was a little bit conflicted that day. It was a thing of beauty.
Actually kicked straight for once that day as well, which helped.
How many did you? At what point in the goal spree did the number 10 start to? Because it must be in the mind of a full forward.
Probably halfway through the third quarter, and I know that I'm kicking straight, and I know that we're getting the ball in there, and there's a mismatch, and so probably sort of when you get to 6 or 7, and it's halfway through the third quarter, you're starting to think, hang on, this is the day.
Was there any chat then at once you get to the 6 or 7 mark? Is it righto, let's feed him. Let's feed the big man and just get him into him, or was it still like we got to play the game the right way?
Yeah, there definitely wasn't any talk amongst the team, but I do feel that your teammates get a sense that you're on, and they probably are looking for you a little bit more. It sort of goes without saying. There's no direct direct talk about it, but I think there's a sense from your teammates. It's like, when one of your teammates is on, and you probably do try and get them the ball a little bit more, I guess.
I remember getting a sense that something was up because you were kicking straight and they were sticky in your hands, and then I think you got one we've kicked it out and there's been a turnover. It's gone straight and you kicked it on your left. It was like, that's having a good day.
Yeah. When I can kick a left foot snap and it actually goes through, you are having a good day. The thing about that one, Bob, that was I think that was the 10th goal on the left foot.
Oh, was it really?
If you watch the highlights, a teammate of mine, Tim Fleming, had, basically thrown his body, at the ball and at a player he caused the spillage, and it was a really brave act. And if you watch the highlights, I don't even go up to him.
It's not about you. It's about the 10.
It's not about your brave act, Clem. It's about my team. All right.
That's true style.
Until you kick 10.
Kick 10.
Yeah, but it was a fun day. It was a fun day.
I bet. What's going on with quarantine, mate? You got Jen, your partner, and little Zoe, who's 2 now, and you got one on the way. How are things in the Richardson household?
Yeah, well, my wife's Jen's only 7 weeks away from having our second. So I was telling Marcus off camera just before we started recording that it's been great. I've been spending a lot of time with my daughter, Zoe. We chuck her in the pram, and we've walked every street of Northcote and Thornbury, I reckon, Bob. So, we go for a walk every day for a couple of hours in the morning. And, I've really enjoyed that time. I feel like I've got closer to her in the last 6 weeks than I probably did in her first 2 years of her life. So, that's been the silver lining.
Oh, that's great.
But like most people, I'm, you're getting stuff done around the house and stuff that you've been putting off for years. We've been doing, so there's not much left.
What do you like at the DIY?
Hopeless. Hopeless. I can't put a screw into the wall. I'm hopeless. No. I'm a good cleaner. I'm a good tidier. I tidy things up. That's what I'm good at.
It's a good way to be. It's a good way to be.
Hey, Matt, on behalf of Marcus and I, thanks for taking a trip down memory lane. It's a big thrill for us, and I've known you for a number of years now. Marcus is getting to know you in recent years, but we do reserve a right to be that 8-year-old kid to chat to our hero, and for you it was Disco Roach, and it's one of the good things about footy where boys and girls, especially girls these days, they can sort of try and emulate their heroes and be inspired by them. So, mate, for what it's worth, thanks so much for swinging by the happy hour. Look after yourself, look after Jen, Zoe, and the little one on the way. But thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for those words, Bob, and thanks, Marcus. I love watching Marcus play now. So hopefully I'm watching you again soon, mate. And yeah, thanks for having me on the happy hour.
No worries, mate. Our pleasure. Our pleasure.